Chat. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Obviously, in the last few moments, you may or may not have heard that there's another attack on the Capitol. It appears 2 officers were injured. An individual drove into a barrier, and one of them was severely injured, at least one. We don't know what the state is of the 2 officers. The attacker was shot, and he has survived so far. That's all we know, but yet it's another attack on our democratic institutions in this country. And we're living in troubled times. There's just no question about it. So let us just take one quick moment for the brave men and women of the Capitol Hill Police who risk their lives day in and day out to protect us. Let's just take one minute of silence just to pray for them. Thank you. Now, I'm here with the mayor of Del Rio, Texas, Mayor Lozano. And Mayor Lozano, welcome to this chat. I'm sorry we can't see you in person, but since you're significantly younger than me, that's probably okay for me. Mayor, are you there?
Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
We sure can. Welcome to the discussion. I appreciate you taking the time out. I want to take a moment, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and talk about your hometown of Del Rio. It's been in the news quite a bit lately. You're right in the thick of things down in Rio Grande Valley, and I wonder if you could spend a little time giving us an on-the-ground account of what you're seeing at home. Hello? You seem to be experiencing more technical difficulties here. The mayor, are you still there, sir?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Just right now. Could you hear what I just said?
Yes. Did you hear my response? I was responding already. I guess we're having technical difficulties.
We did not hear anything, sir. So go ahead, please.
Okay. No, I was saying no. I want to, recognize those men and women protecting our country in Washington, D.C. and my heart goes out to them as well. And I'm speaking on the men and women that are protecting the border communities, the American communities as well. We oftentimes feel left out of the conversation when it comes to immigration reform and policy and, national security. And our men and women are out here on the ground protecting our country from the invasion, the surge, and the crisis. And I'm using those words specifically because we have Representative Ocasio-Cortez just recently, tried to be politically correct about the language and the terminology and the syntax. But it is a surge, it is an invasion, and it is a crisis here. I'm a United States military veteran. I was trained in security forces. I know firsthand protecting perimeters and bases and our national assets. When we're out there deployed in Kuwait and all the Al Salim Air Base, I'm trained for this kind of arena. And to have a congresswoman out there, trying to provide narrative from an area that she's not even familiar with, it really frustrates our community. It really frustrates the citizens of Del Rio, Texas, the border communities. And we're tired of it. We're tired of being left out of this conversation. And, we see every day people enter unlawfully our community, and we have to respond with providing services voluntarily with funding now. We have to claim the funding. Our nonprofits have to go out there and prove that they've actually used the funds for this reason or what have you. And it's just bogus. It's just complete a failed policy and a failed message to those individuals that are coming, because it's enticing them to want to come here and get these, these programs that they're allowed to partake in, and our constituents, our citizens, are extremely frustrated with that. We have people that have been unemployed. We have individuals that are trying to make their ends meet with rent or what have you, and when they see the headlines of $86 million going to persons that aren't even from the country and have entered unlawfully, it's extremely frustrating. It's extremely I can't even put into words the way that my citizens have approached me and said, thank you so much for speaking out, and so thank you so much for raising your voice against what's going on. And that's just like the basic broad experience over the last couple of weeks.
Well, great. Well, I want to drill down on all of this, and we got to start at the beginning. And mind you, you're in the thick of things down there on the front line, so you're seeing it all. But we've got to paint that picture for others in the United States so they understand. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you just a simple question. When did you first become mayor?
I was elected May 2018. So it's going to be 3-4 years now. My term ends May 2022.
Okay, so you were mayors down in Del Rio, Texas, on the border for the last couple of years. Did things dramatically change on January 20th when President Biden signed the executive orders rolling back immigration?
I'm glad that you asked that, because people were calling out Senator Cruz because apparently he's now interested and he's touring these facilities, and they're asking, well, where were you during Trump, during the previous administration, during President Trump's, immigration surge back then? And I can tell you, and I have we called a special meeting between the
we lost you there, sir.
Mayor, it looks like you're on mute.
Can you hear me again? This
Yes.
app is really not working very well. I haven't even touched the screen. It's I don't know what happened. It muted itself, I guess. But you guys can hear me again, right?
We can.
Okay, so what I was getting at is that this is nothing new. I was criticizing and vocal over the previous administration, with the surge and under President Trump, and I spoke directly during a town hall meeting with the county, city, and school district. We were all involved. We were all very concerned about the surge then, and I'm deeply concerned now. And I can tell you that the previous administration did take a hard stance in protecting the communities, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic as it emerged in 2020 last year. The previous administration took a hard stance in protecting the communities by doing 100% deportations. There was no allowance and no, deterrence from that policy. It's 100%. You go back to your country or you be held in Mexico. And as soon as President Biden took office, as soon as this administration began the executive orders, even if it didn't touch these titles directly, the very fact of the matter that he was conducting executive orders to basically reverse so many policies under the previous administration, it resonated with the transient population. It resonated with the population that's leaving their home countries and trying to make a better life in the United States, because they know now that they can cross over, and the majority of them will be able to stay in the United States. There's a small percentage that's being deported, a very small percentage of individuals that go back to their country based on the treaties and the not treaties, but the policies that we have with their home countries. But the majority of them are coming through, and they're entering, and they're being allowed a free pass into the United States, and most recently without even court dates. So they're being allowed to enter the country and not even given a status. They're still here illegally in the United States of America. And my frustration is that here you have a president who's on the surface trying to say, we have COVID-19 restrictions in place. The CDC recently changed the directive with schools with 3 feet away instead of 6 feet away, trying to just, amend and adapt to the ever-changing virus. But we have citizens here in Del Rio that see these individuals. They're in our community. They're at our city parks. They're going to our businesses. They're entering and knocking on homes. They're trespassing on private property, and we have this completely disconnected narrative being told to the American population that this is not a crisis, that things are under control, when in fact they're not.
Well, Mayor, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned something very important there. They're coming across the border, being released. Where do they go? Who's taking care of them? What's happening to your city? Because you mentioned a little bit like they're knocking on doors. I mean, you're telling me they're just being released into your community, and then they can go anywhere, do whatever they want. And what's going on? That's crazy to me.
We have a great working relationship between our nonprofit organization, the Val Verde Humanitarian Coalition, a great group of volunteers, men and women that voluntarily take time out of their busy day, their livelihood, to go and process, and I use the term process, these migrants that the Border Patrol drops them off. They drop them off at this location, a very small municipal building that we have. We don't have these vacant lots or these vacant arenas like the Valley or Laredo has. We have small buildings here in Del Rio and Eagle Pass. And luckily, the Border Patrol and the city and the county and this volunteer group has this understanding that the Border Patrol is going to do their very best to release migrants and individuals at this location. And so what happens is that they're released, but there's nobody to control that. They're once they're released and outside the vehicle of transportation from the Border Patrol, they're free to go. They're able to roam around wherever they want. And oftentimes what happens is that if there's like 100 released at one time, some of them will walk around and leave that facility and just be merry, happily going through our city parks, going to, people's residents, asking for food from private citizens. And that's what's happening. It's happening here. It's happening in Eagle Pass. And the other concern is that because we're so close in proximity to the border, we don't even know if some of these individuals are those individuals released by the Border Patrol, or if they actually made it across illegally and they're making first contact with our residents, because the Border Patrol is that over. They're stretched too thin trying to respond to the hundreds of individuals that are crossing daily. They're capturing and detaining individuals in the hundreds, 600 individuals a day. The daily average last week was 700 individials a day in the Del Rio sector. A day.
So what happens? How long do they stay there before they're released into the community?
It depends on the titles. It depends on the amount. I believe the average stay is a few days. And they have to.
We just lost him again.
Mayor, we just asked you to unmute on the back end. If you can unmute yourself one more time, please.
I swear I'm not touching the screen. I'm not doing anything. I don't know why it keeps muting me automatically.
No worries.
So what I was saying is, so 700 a day, and they're released into the cities of Eagle Pass, Del Rio, and Carrizo Springs. Eagle Pass can process more individuals a day because they have a larger arena. And I'm saying the word arena, but they really just have the downtown area where they have private bus groups that transport individuals to San Antonio and beyond. We don't have that. We have a private bus group, the Greyhound and American Airlines, that can help facilitate the needs of this transient population. But our facility itself is smaller than that in Eagle Pass. And so the situation is that you have the Rio Grande Valley, McAllen, Brownsville, Edinburgh, Harlingen, that have a larger population. So they have larger volunteer groups. They have Catholic charities, for example, that are helping facilitate these needs. You have Laredo, which is another larger city than Eagle Pass and Del Rio. And so those numbers are going to be higher, and they're going to look like they have more people transiting through those communities. But the problem is that we might have smaller numbers, but we have far fewer resources to provide. We're stretched so thin. the Border Patrol agents have to cover a larger landmass, 240 miles between Carrizo Springs and the Del Rio sector alone, 50,000 square miles of real estate, of private property, of land. And we only have so many agents to manage this. We have the sheriff deputies, county sheriff deputies in Val Verde County responding and detaining migrants and immigrants and refugees who cross unlawfully and holding them for up to 45 minutes to an hour and a half while they wait for Border Patrol to respond. Because the Border Patrol has depleted and been stretched so thin responding to the hundreds a day that are coming in unlawfully.
Yeah,
And
so
when we have
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to ask you about that in a second. It's really important. How big a city is Del Rio, number one, and number two? Please tell us the stress on the resources for your police and fire departments and what it's costing the city to deal with this.
We have
crisis.
36,000 people in the city and 50,000 people in the county. And I'm going to go back to that example about the county sheriff responding. We only have one deputy sheriff that patrols Val Verde County north of Del Rio, and he patrols Comstock, Texas, a town that's maybe 300 people in population. And when we have to send our deputy sheriffs from the city area, because this is where the higher density is, out there to go and monitor these individuals that are detained and in custody, who's patrolling the county? Who's responding to the domestic violence call? Who's responding to the fires? Who's responding to the break-ins? Nobody. Nobody's responding because our sheriffs are out there trying to manage this federal crisis that continues to be ignored. Our Border Patrol agents are strapped thin. They're stretched so thin. They have to process the paperwork. We have the National Guard deployed to the city of Del Rio, Val Verde County, and they're sitting in offices processing paperwork. That's what they're doing right now. And this idiocracy, of $86 million going to fund hotel rooms. Where are they going to stay if they're staying in Del Rio, Texas, when the National Guard, we only have 4 or 5 hotels to choose from. They're literally being placed into hotels sharing the same space with our National Guard that's out here to assist the CBP and Border Patrol agents. It makes absolutely no sense.
Who's
it
paying
makes
for those hotels?
absolutely no sense.
Who's paying for those hotels?
The $86 million that came in from the DHS. It was announced like 2 or 3 weeks ago that's what the Biden administration released. $86 million to go, and they're getting these hotel vouchers, and that's if they test positive for COVID-19 or what have you, they get to stay in a hotel.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the testing real quick. Is everybody released being tested? And the reason I asked that is because I was in El Paso a couple of weeks ago rather. There was 1,000 people in the center there. Most of them were unaccompanied children, but none of them were being tested. And they basically told me they didn't want to test them because if they did, they would have no place to quarantine them. So
that's exactly how I feel about it as well. That's exactly how I feel about it, Congressman. Because the thing is that my first of all, this is a federal issue. If they need to provide the federal resources, deploy the doctors, deploy the nurses, deploy the beds, get up those costs, get up those tent cities here in the area, because if they test positive, I'm not going to let them mix with my population. I have to reserve these hotel spaces for my own population. We have one hospital that covers the entire county, and we only have so many bed spaces for my own citizens. How am I gonna respond to a citizen's concern when their grandmother or their aunt or their father is sick and a bed space is being taken by a person who entered this country unlawfully? How am I supposed to respond to that?
Yeah, so Mayor, let me ask you that too. What is the tone and tenor of your constituents?
They're furious.
Tell me about it. What are you hearing?
Congressman Katko, they're furious. They're upset. They've completely lost all respect for this administration. All the advances that are being made, if you want to call them that, COVID-19 relief and this $2 trillion infrastructure expense, it's laughable because here we are with this broken policy. We have unlawful persons coming into our cities and taking our resources. On the other side of it, we have the port of entry. The legal port of entry, the legal way to enter and exit this country is closed because of COVID-19 restrictions. So we have Mexican nationals that have been through the legal process the right way to get their visa status, a green card, to come into the United States and visit their families, shop in our communities, visit our area, and actually add to the tax base here, they're told no because they're trying to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 a year later. And I can tell you that my citizens, my constituents, are extremely frustrated right now because they have family members in Mexico, in Ciudad Acuña, that didn't even get to go to funerals, didn't get to pay their last respect to their loved ones that died of COVID-19 here in Del Rio, Texas. And yet they're out here saying, why do they get to come in here and just go to wherever they want to go without any papers? Sin papeles, ahí entran.
Mr. Mayor, that's crazy. That's unbelievable. So
It's
you're saying
absurd.
if you come across the border, the port of entry is closed because of COVID. Yet if you walk
Right.
across the border and raise your hands, you're put in a
Yep.
hotel or you're released into your community
Yep.
without even being tested.
How do you think we feel about it? I mean,
That's
and we have
incredible.
staunch Democrat left leaders. I mean, we have people that had volunteered before to provide services during the Trump administration, with the first surge or what have you. And they're all scratching their heads. This is not the way to do it. They're condoning unlawful entry, number one, and indirectly with that behavior, they're condoning they're condoning organized criminal activity, because it's not like these migrants are using Google Maps and Apple Maps on their smartphones to come through Mexico. They're paying the cartels, the coyotes, to get them through and navigate these communities in Mexico to find the crossing point here along our border. They're funding organized activities. They're funding all that criminal organization. So all the advances that we made to dismantle the cartels over the last decade is being ruined. This is completely turning upside, and they're making a killing off of these individuals who are destitute and desperate to come into our country.
I saw some figures that for February alone, the cartels generated at least $500 million in revenue. But
Yep.
have you ever seen anything like similar to this? How bad this is right now?
Never. Not even in 2007, when the Federales of Mexico came into our sister cities and cleaned out shop against the cartels back then. That was a drop in the ocean. This is the ocean. This is funding organized activity in unprecedented. I mean, I can't even begin to describe to you how this is going to resonate for years to come, because you're empowering that organization. Mexico is going to feel the consequences. Our neighbor, our friends to the south are going to feel this consequence for years to come. And let me just plant this seed in everybody's mind. I don't know who else is listening and who else can pass this message along. What you're seeing, the data, is the individuals of people entering unlawfully that want to get caught. The majority of these individuals, in the thousands across the entire border sector, are the ones that want to deliberately get caught. They are crossing with their hands up because they know if they're detained, they're going to make it. They're not going to get deported, and they're going to get all of these, these resources provided to them at our expense. The fear is, if you go out to Sanderson, Texas, you will find a completely different transient population. Those are the individuals that do not want to get caught. That's where you have your extreme groups. That's where you have your other nationalities coming in. And those are the ones
that's my concern, Mayor, because when I was in the El Paso sector, we were told repeatedly that a lot of Border Patrol agents had to be pulled off the front lines guarding those people who don't want to get caught, just to deal with the certain people that are coming across and gaming the system. So let's just play fantasy for a minute here and put you in charge of what to do here to fix this. What would you do to fix this problem? And is it
100% deportation? 100%. Everybody come. If you enter unlawfully, you do not get to seek asylum opportunities. You need to enter the country through a legal port of entry and seek asylum through a legal port, period. Because that's the way that's the legal way. That's the authorized procedure right now. And what we're doing, we're enabling unlawful behavior. We need to send a strong message to these individuals that entering unlawfully is not condoned. That way it defunds these organized criminal organizations in Mexico. And that way those people, our Border Patrol, can go back to the ground and back to those areas of patrolling for and look out for that transit population that does not want to get caught, and actually catch them and process them legally. And what we need to do on the other end.
Is it fair to say though that that's what was going on before Biden's executive orders on January 20th?
Right. Right. The previous administration used COVID-19 to its advantage and did 100% deportation. For the first time, it was just 100%. It was beautiful. The Border Patrol was catching a breather that they haven't had in years, because they were able to finally catch up and reanalyze and reprocess and figure out the weak points and the weak spots. As soon as this administration came in, it was back to square one. And it's broken. I kid you not. And another fantasy and something that people don't realize in Washington D.C. is like, I remember reading a report where with no evidence, exposure to CDC is what the Governor Abbott or Governor of Texas is stating, or what have you. And I'm here scratching my head, because the CDC clearly states 15 minutes or more is exposure to COVID-19. Where do you think our Border Patrol agents live? They don't live in Border Patrol City, Texas. They live here in Del Rio. They live in Carrizo Springs. They live in Eagle Pass. They have children. They have wives and husbands. They're part of our community. They're exposed to COVID-19 as soon as they detain these individuals. It's not like they're testing these individuals in El Monte, ahí in the desert. They're not. They're testing them in a facility. So they have to drive an hour and a half with these individuals, circulating the same air that they're in, and they bring it home to their families. And then those families go to our schools. They work in our communities. Where this whole COVID-19 stance is ridiculous. Open up our port of entry if that's the case. Give us our funding back.
Let me ask
Sorry,
you.
I just get really passionate.
No, it's great. Listen, I totally respect your passion, and you know what? People in America need to see what's going on in the front lines, and you're certainly it. So let me ask you, if this doesn't get under control and get under control quickly, what's your biggest fear for your community going forward? Those individuals that are entering the country and don't want to get caught, that's my biggest concern. If you go out to Sanderson, Texas, that ranching community out there is seeing individuals steal their vehicles, breaking into their homes and just stealing their food, stealing and robbing them of their goods. That is happening right now. It's not being transmitted in real time, but it's happening right now. Our ranching community here in Val Verde, Texas, for example, the same thing. I'm worried that there's going to be a migrant, an asylee shot to death and killed because a rancher is protecting his property, and he has every right to do so. You have trespassers. Here you have this narrative of like, oh, I'm sympathetic to the migrants and to these asylees and refugees. They're trying to make a better life. They're entering private property. It's not like land out here belongs to the federal government. This is not a federal park that they're entering. They're entering private ranching communities' property, period. These ranchers use the land. They have cattle. They have livestock. They manage the land as it is. This is real property right now, and they're going to protect their property. This is trespassing. If it was me or you, Congressman Katko, if we were out there, just happened to step foot on these ranches, we would be shot. We would be arrested on instantaneously. The sheriff would come out here and say, "You're trespassing." But yet, because they're migrants from another country seeking asylum, oh, it's okay to trespass. It's absurd. And that's my concern, is that we're going to have the ranching community out there take things into their own hands. The vigilantes, they're going to come out here and they're going to start taking things to their own. And that's how is the Border Patrol agent supposed to respond when you have a rancher with a gun pointed at these migrants? What are they supposed to do? Right. Let me ask you that, Mayor, before we wrap up here with a couple more quick questions. The people coming across the border, they're not all children, are they?
No, not at all. I was at the
just those children coming across.
No, absolutely not. And this whole thing, they think, oh, it's just family units. That is not the truth at all. I went down there myself to the Val Verde Humanitarian Coalition myself. I've gone several times, several different dates, and I can tell you there are single males being released into the United States of America. They're not family units. They're not minors. They're adult males, my age, in their 30s, being released into this country unlawfully, period. So this whole narrative that it's just family units, it's just unaccompanied children, That is not the truth. That is not the truth whatsoever. And I remember reading the president talk about, we need to have negotiations and policies with Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And I want to tell the president directly that those three countries aren't even the representation that I spoke to. I spoke to Venezuelans, Cubans, and Haitians.
Mhm.
So the last report that I got from Chief Scurro out of the Border Patrol sector for Del Rio alone, this area alone, 58 nationalities represented that were detained. 58 nations coming
Since
through
Since
the
when?
Del Rio sector.
Since when?
Since this year alone. This is just data
gosh.
within January. Just
58 different nationalities.
58 nationalities in 2021 alone. And I can tell you the data. In January, we had 300 detainees as soon as President Biden got into office, 300 within a 2-week period. In February, it went up to 600 for the total month. In March, mid-March, it was already at 1,200 individuals. I have yet to get the final status, the final data for the whole month of March. But mid-March, not even, it was like March 10th when I had the subcommittee meetings. It was 1,200 detained in the Del Rio sector alone. It's doubling every 2 weeks.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm head of the Homeland Security Committee for Republicans, and we have direct
Right.
responsibility for border security. And, I know this administration is trying to paint a different picture, but what you told us today is extraordinarily enlightening.
Mhm.
I appreciate that. But,
Absolutely.
what do you need from us? What do you need from federal elected officials to deal with this crisis?
We need to take this by the horns and just face it head on. We need to recognize the fact that we need to stop condoning unlawful behavior, period. Entering the country, seeking asylum through a non-legal port of entry cannot be condoned. It needs to be 100% deportation. And we need to support the staff members at the CBP, at the port of entry, and provide those resources, magistrates, judges, build infrastructure to process lawful entry. We need to start funneling all these individuals into the legal area of entry, period. Because if they try to rewrite this policy and say, okay, we're gonna release, capture and release, which was happening, and providing funding for hotels and food, it's only incentivizing them that much more. Because by the time these headlines reach Central America, South America, and the rest of the world, what they see is $110 million going to feed them, $86 million going to hotel rooms. They want a piece of that pie, period. That's what they get. By the time they tell their tias and their tios, their hermanitos, all the people, where they're from, they're going to be thinking, oh, pues te van a dar dinero. You're going to get money. You're going to get a room. You're going to get this. Just say that you're asylum seeking. That's it. They're not going to their court dates. They're working unlawfully in Nashville and Denver. That's where they're going. They're going to Miami. They're not claiming a Social Security number because they already have everything established in their cities that they're going to. They're waiters. They're sex slaves. They're all the above, under the table, getting paid cash. Period.
So, Mr. Mayor, let me ask you this. I could keep going, but I've got to get off in a minute here. We've gone way over. Fascinating. But let me ask you. What if President Biden woke up tomorrow morning and said, you know what, I got it wrong on January 20th when I issued those series of executive orders. I'm going to rescind all of them. We're going to go back to the way it was before January 20th. If that happened, what impact do you think that would have on your community?
Oh, it would be so beneficial. We would be grateful. We would breathe a sigh of relief.
Why?
That we don't have to process these individuals, because the volunteer groups, they're exhausted. Do you understand where my frustration comes in? Where it all started is that I was managing the weather phenomena, the weather crisis that happened in February, and that's the day that February 16th is when it was brought to my attention that they're going to be releasing refugees into Del Rio, Texas. I had no running water. I had no electricity. I had empty shelves at the grocery stores here. And this administration expected me to send off my volunteer groups to process these migrants because they wanted to cross during a winter storm. It was impossible. And that's my next fear. So in addition to vigilantes taking matters into their own hands, my fear is Brownsville, Texas, getting hit by a Category 5 hurricane, and those migrants coming through regardless of flooding, regardless of the damaged infrastructure, because the weather does not deter them, period.
Okay.
Period.
Mr. Mayor, we could go on for a lot longer, but we're coming down to McAllen on April 11th, and maybe we can try and find you if you got a few minutes. I'm coming down with the
Okay.
Republican congressional delegation.
I'm 6 hours north, but Del Rio, Texas is 6 hours. Yeah,
Wow.
It's a big state. Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, is that people, it's what's happening in McAllen is not going to be the same response or solution for Del Rio, and that's not going to be the same for El Paso. The border is oftentimes grouped together as this one area, but our cities are so varied, so different, with different resources and different atmospheres and different, economic indicators and factors that it's not a one-stop shop. It's not a one-stop solution, period. It's not going to be. We're remote up here in Del Rio, Texas. So, but no, I would love to visit with you guys. If you guys want to come to Del Rio, I will gladly, welcome you and show you, and we can show you where these migrants are captured. So show you where their bodies are found, the deceased are found. We can show you all this firsthand and tell you why this policy is not working.
Well,
I would be happy to do
that. No matter where you are on the border, if the president would rescind his executive orders of January 20th, we would get this situation under control pretty quickly. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
All right.
100%.
Well, listen, sorry for the technical difficulties. You've been fantastic, and I definitely want to follow up with you, and I'm going to reach out to you offline and give you my cell number and stuff so we can stay in touch. Okay.
Sounds great. I welcome it, and anything you need from me, Congressman Katko, I'm here for you guys. We need to get this message out.
Well,
I appreciate it.
And God bless you for doing that. Have a great Easter. But I'm going to thank everybody for tuning in, and also keep the Capitol Hill police officers who were injured today in your thoughts and prayers.
Absolutely.
You're on the front lines,
Absolutely.
man, and I tell you, they've had a rough year, and we've got to keep supporting them. And we'll do what we can to help you going forward, Mayor. Take care and God bless.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Happy Easter. Bye-bye, everybody.